VitreosHealth, Beyond Insights.
So our disease models are used to calculate a risk score, which is a number between 1 and 100. And that number represents the probability that the patient is going to have a high cost intervention in the near term, in the next 12 to 18 months. That number also indicates the state of health of the patient relative to that disease. Now, we have various disease models. So if a patient is diagnosed with diabetes and CAD and asthma, we will have 3 different scores, each for one of those conditions. So if the diabetes score is, let's say, 65%, okay, that indicates the state of health of that patient for the diabetes chronic condition. So that is the reason why the state of health, or the SOH, is a true indicator of how risky the patient is relative to that particular disease. So the current models historically have been very much focused on using claims data and then coming up with a risk score. The approach that we have taken is where we believe that clinical risk and non-clinical risk both contribute to the overall risk of a patient. The clinical risk is, in our case, we actually calculate the clinical risk using the disease models. Okay, these are established disease models that we use to calculate the clinical risk of a patient. But in addition to that, we also calculate non-clinical risk. We calculate utilization risks, compliance risk, socioeconomic risk, access to care risk, well-being risk. And we bring all these risk scores together to then create a 360-degree view of the patient. Because once you have visibility into all of these risk scores, you can then design a tailored and a highly effective care management program. So recently, one of our customers approached us. They had started a program with one of their payers, and it was called the Super Visit program. And the idea behind this was that the payers were sending them lists of risky patients, and they had to get each of those patients in an office for a 360-degree evaluation. Typically, it would take 1 hour for the physician to go through all the battery of tests and the interrogations and everything like that. And the idea was to get a complete picture of the patient, etc. So that they called that the Super Visit program. Now, the care management team called us, and they said that we are in our 3rd month into this program, and our doctors are getting upset because a lot of the patients that they are seeing as part of the Super Visit programs are healthy, and the patients are getting annoyed because they think that there is no reason for them to be forced into scheduling these sort of meetings. So the care management team came to us and said, well, can you run this particular population that has been handed to us, can you run this through your models and tell us what you think, right? So we took that population, we ran it through our models, and guess what? What we found was about 6% of that population that were flagged as high-risk patients were what we call false positives. That means that those were actually healthy, relatively healthy patients. And if you actually looked at their medical records, and if you actually looked at the disease models that we were using, these patients were being flagged as healthy. On the other hand, there was an roughly equal, about 5 or 6% of the population that were false negatives. That means they were actually not part of this population that was flagged as being risky, whereas they should have been on that population. So we took those results back to the care management teams, and they in turn took it back to the physicians, and the physicians looked at it and said, yeah, this actually makes a whole lot of sense. So here's a program that is so inefficient because they're putting resources and money in chasing patients that are healthy, whereas they really should be looking at the patients that are not healthy. One aspect of it was the productivity of the care managers, that they were really wasting their time on the wrong set of patients. And the other half was the patients that really needed to be included in this were not included. So taken together, we estimated that this was there was approximately $15 to $20 per member per month impact that potentially they were not capturing